Good afternoon, everybody. Haki, Ammi here, the Success Scholar, and I'm here today with a wonderful opportunity to interview Miss Olivia Darden. Olivia Darden, attorney at law. So, how are you today?
I am well, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Great, great, great. Well, you have a wonderful, wonderful CV and resume. It's just an awesome opportunity to really sit down and have a conversation with you today. So, just share a little bit about yourself, your journey and your history. Where has your journey taken you so far?
Okay, I'd be happy to.
Mm-hmm.
When I think of my journey, I think of Langston Hughes's poem, Mother to Son, and there he talks about life for me has been no crystal stair. And it talks about there have been rough places and hard places, but don't you set down on that step, you just keep on going. And that's the way life has been for me. I'm a lifelong Marylander, Anne Arundel County, just outside of Annapolis, Maryland. And started my life there in a small black community, walking distance from the United States Naval Academy.
Oh,
And so it was an offshoot of the old plantation system, as you know, of Kunta Kinte coming into the dock of Annapolis and the slave trade and all of that. All of that was a reality, and so our community was just one of those small plantations that ultimately turned into one of the many black communities in and around Anne Arundel County. So growing up there, I had a happy childhood, large family. Went to school in Anne Arundel County school system, all segregated school from first grade on, and then went to a HBCU. And so I had an enjoyable life. 9 of us. My father was in World War II. Came home. He and my mother used the GI Bill, got a house for us, and so.
What branch was he in?
Military, Army.
Army,
In
okay.
Army,
Okay.
yes.
My father and grandfather, right? Yeah.
So I'm one of the baby boomers, and that first group of baby boomers that came along after World War II.
Oh, great. So we met at a very empowering conference, and some of the conversation that they discussed was about utilizing your pain to overcome and sharing your story. And over the course of your journey as an African American, you experienced pain personally, professionally, or have you, shall I say, personally or professionally, that gave you the drive and passion to want to change the world.
Yes. At one of the conferences we attended, because I've been attending some of these conferences with you, one of the nuggets I got was, don't waste your pain. Use your pain for benefit. And I think that's what happened to me at a very young age, without realizing it, the kind of pain I experienced personally as a young child stayed with me, motivated me, and became a passion and a drive for me to go on and be all that I could. And if you don't mind, I'd like to describe that pain, because it's still very real to me. I guess I was about 9 or 10 years old, and in Annapolis, and if I paint the picture for you, it's the marketplace there. I mentioned to you about the Kunta Kinte dock where the slaves were there on the auction block. Well, there's a memorial still there right in that area. So it's a very small, it's the equivalent of 4 blocks, almost a square. And then in the center, to the left of that square, was the old Amoco gas station. And there were 4 restrooms, one for colored women and colored men, and one for white men and white ladies. And then there was the marketplace, and you'd have the restaurants, which is a restaurant that's still there now. I mean, it was utilized by the midshipmen and, tourists coming into town, Middletown Tavern. But then right around the corner were several black small businesses. It was Joe's Bar, it was the pool room, it was Miss Helen Gray's crab cake place. And so when my family came from the country to go into the city on the weekend to shop, we would get a little parking space, and my father knew he had the best parking space if it was right in front of Middletown Tavern. So I say all that to paint the picture of what happened on this particular Saturday when we were there. My father loved a fried soft crab sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
And so what he would do was to send one of us, it was usually me,
Mm.
into Middletown to get that sandwich.
Mm.
Now, I knew that the only thing I could do was go in the front door, go directly to the register, pay for it, get it, and it was being prepared in the back by one of their best black chefs.
Mm-hmm.
I also knew to the left where the booths where the midshipmen and their families and all
Mm.
they sat. And I knew that there was a restroom at the end of that aisle.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I went in there to get the crab cake and apparently had just one too many lot of colas or whatever
Mhm.
that my body could tolerate.
Right.
And I'm waiting for this crab cake. And my bladder couldn't take it any longer.
Right.
And I'm looking at
Mhm.
this restroom, knowing that I need to go, but at the same time, knowing that I could not go.
Mhm.
That I dare not walk down that aisle and go to that restroom because it wasn't for me.
Wow.
And as I tell you this, it's very embarrassing,
Mhm.
but it's very real.
Mm.
I felt this warm substance going down my thighs,
Mm-hmm.
filling my loafers and my white socks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't go to that bathroom.
Right.
And I was so humiliated when I walked out of there. I couldn't even tell my parents what had happened to me.
Wow.
But I went to the colored bathroom and cleaned myself up and dried myself up. And I was an adult before I even shared that with anybody. And I made up my mind that day.
Mm-hmm.
I would never, ever be that humiliated again
Mm.
and feel that kind of pain. So it just said to me that my children, when I have children one day, will
Mhm.
never, ever experience that. And so I did everything I could to
Mhm.
do all the things to try to make the world a better place, and as a
Right.
result, went on to school, became a school teacher, and
Right.
later an
Yes,
attorney,
yes.
and retired, and now I'm embarking upon another career.
Beautiful, beautiful. So we touched upon a few of those things. So, you know, being one of the first African American female attorneys to practice law in Maryland, correct?
Yes.
And how did your predominantly white male colleagues treat you, and how did you handle some of those situations?
Yes, according to Professor Larry Gibson, who's a professor at
Mhm.
the law school, University of Maryland Law School, where I went.
Okay.
He's a historian,
Yes.
really.
He got a
And-
new book out.
Yeah, oh,
Yeah.
the new Thurgood.
Oh,
Yeah,
right, yes,
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes, yes,
The
yes, yes.
first one was a young Thurgood. I love
Right,
that.
right,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
So Larry keeps track of African American law school graduates as to whether they're number 1, 2, or whatever.
Oh,
And
wow.
he said to me one day, and I was in his office. He said, "You're the number 11th African American female to be admitted to Maryland Bar."
Oh,
So that
wow.
was sort of cool because it's 1-1. So I'm really 2
Right.
lines up there.
Right.
So at any rate, law school was a very trying time for me because prior to that, I had been what was considered a very good student,
Mhm.
being called on, participating, and so forth.
Mhm.
And so it became very clear to those of us who were African American students that whether you had the right answer or not, whether you raised your hand, your answer was never accepted.
Mm.
And so that was very disheartening, very disturbing. But after law school, and after passing the bar the first time around, it
Mhm.
gave me a renewed confidence that, hey,
Mm.
I'm not only capable, I'm gonna be darn good at this.
Wow.
But in the meantime, I was looking for a job. So what happens is I'm sending out just tons of resumes, primarily to small, large, white law firms,
Mhm.
state's attorney's office, all these different places, and I wasn't getting any feedback.
Mm.
And so that was very disheartening. I'd go in for interviews, if by chance I got an interview, and I was never selected.
Mm.
And one very painful and disturbing thing was in my own home county, Anne Arundel County,
Mhm.
I applied for a job as assistant state's attorney.
Mm.
And I was told by the then state's attorney that he could hire me as a law clerk or as an assistant.
Mhm.
Now that's something that one would do when they're still a law student,
Right,
okay?
right, right. Wow.
I've already passed the bar.
Wow.
And then he hires an assistant state's attorney, a white female who got admitted to the bar the very same day that I did.
Wow.
And so that was very disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
So I later applied for some African American law firms. Most of them were small, and many of them could not
Mhm.
really afford to hire any kind of staff. But I was fortunate to get a job with Johnson and Smith, Ken Johnson and Gerald Smith,
Mm-hmm.
and premier law firm.
Mm-hmm.
Ken was a real pioneer in Title VII discrimination work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really learned a lot. He was my mentor, and just learned a lot, and was able to handle various numbers of cases under his leadership.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. So during your law career, let's talk about some of your highlights that you say you had.
Let's see. Well, I got the job with Ken,
Mm-hmm.
and that was pretty exciting because right out of law school, to be able to go along with him to federal court and
Mm-hmm.
actually try cases was really quite phenomenal, because we were trying cases back then in the 70s against some of the top law firms in the city, in whatever city we happened to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And so persons who were coming out of law school at the same time that I was, they were not at the trial table. They were doing research back at the office or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But Ken had me right there. So he was grooming me, and I actually got to try cases in federal court. So that was pretty neat.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he was representing, in most instances, police departments,
Mhm.
fire departments, Richmond, Baltimore, Wilmington,
And what's his name again?
Philadelphia. Ken Johnson, who
Yes,
later,
yes,
Ken? Ken later went on to become circuit court judge in Baltimore City.
Yes.
And I think he's back in Mississippi, which is his home
wow. Okay,
now.
okay.
But, I give Ken all the credit, and a lot of people
Ken
don't.
Laverne.
That's it, yeah, Lavon, yeah,
Johnson.
Lavon Johnson.
I've read some of his issues where he's discussing, shall I say, about the police, related police, and how they target. You mentioned that about them targeting low-level drug dealers. Yeah, I think you mentioned that in our conversation, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, a number of people who are now employed in either fire departments
Mhm.
or police departments in
Right.
some of the major cities along the East Coast
Mhm.
have Ken Johnson to thank for their positions, their
Yes,
hiring, their
absolutely.
promotion.
Yes.
Because what we did is we went in, we got the records, we had, certified class action, and as a result, some of the first police chiefs, fire chiefs, and all of that came as a result of consent decrees that Ken was able to get.
Yes,
So
yes.
that was, pretty phenomenal, and I really appreciate the experience, that I got
Mhm,
there.
mhm.
And then I went on with State's Attorney's Office.
Okay, correct,
Kurt
right.
Schmoke and I came out of
Yes.
law school the same year.
Former mayor of Baltimore.
Yeah, former mayor of Baltimore and State's Attorney for several years.
Yes, yes.
So I worked there, and that was an exciting job. As a
Mhm.
prosecutor, you see things in real time, in real action, that a lot of people see on TV.
Mhm.
Because people ask me, do you look at The Wire or CSI or whatever? And I says, no, because it's too much like work, because a lot of that is reality. But it was great trial experience for me to be
Mhm.
able to be a part of the Special Narcotics Unit in Baltimore City, where we had the, I think his slogan was, the war on drugs, we're gonna clean up
Mhm.
drugs. We tried, we
Mhm.
tried.
Mhm.
And then I was transferred to the homicide unit and special felonies. So I got to see a lot of action. I handled a lot of jury trials, cases before judges, and
Mhm.
things of that nature. So it really prepared me well for where I ultimately ended up, which was owning my own law firm.
Mhm.
And then the joy of that was my son, who was going to Howard Law School, came in as my law clerk. After a few summer jobs, he decided he wanted to work there with me.
Mhm.
So
Right,
we
right, right.
became mother, son, law firm. Probably one of the few that's around, African-American law
Mhm.
firms anyway.
Wow, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
So, yes, in your mother and son law firm, you had the opportunity to meet and work with Johnny Cochran?
Oh, yes,
so
yes.
share.
That's another aspect that was really interesting.
Mhm.
I got to know Johnny as a person and as an attorney, and it was interesting how all of that came about.
Mhm.
I think it was 1999. And it turned out that he was representing the father and I was representing the mother of a child who had drowned at a lake.
Mhm.
And we realized very quickly that we're on the same team. We're representing the same interests here. So he came to Baltimore, and we met and we talked and strategized on the case, and he liked the work we did.
Mhm.
And after that case was resolved, he began referring his Maryland cases to us. We worked with him on matters in New York, primarily in Baltimore, but even some Chicago cases too. So for 5 years, we had a very good working relationship with Johnny, personally, his firm, but more directly with him. He would call and says, look, I have someone over in east part of Baltimore who needs to see an attorney today. It's a Sunday afternoon. It's like, okay, it's Johnny Cochran. I'm going to go ahead and do this. And so he liked our style. He liked the fact that we took care of business and we handled things very well. So it was a very good working relationship. And as a result of that, Johnny also knew that I was working on a major class action case here in Maryland, against the state of Maryland. We were representing a number of juveniles who were mistreated at these boot camps in Western Maryland. You may have heard about that.
Yes.
So as a result, we were able to come to a resolution with the state of Maryland, significant benefits for the juveniles, but more importantly, it changed the way these juveniles were being treated, and they were just really being abused. So that was a significant aspect, and Johnny then, based upon that case, recommended us as trial lawyers of the year before the National Trial Lawyers for Justice, Public Justice. We became one of the 5 finalists, went to Atlanta, and my son and I had that joy of being amongst the 5 finalists. We didn't win, but we were the 5 finalists, and the firm that did win was an African-American firm that had worked on a case in Mississippi for a number of years that had to do with the disparity in the funding of higher education in Mississippi. So we did not win, but the person who did, I was very happy for them because they had worked hard on that. So.
Great. Wow, this is great. So in terms of now, we I'm sure we could go on for a long time, but because you had such a long and illustrious career, but you want to speak.
One
sure.
other little additional thing. That same year that Johnny recommended us for that award, the president of Maryland State Bar Association, Henry Dugan, also saw that case and saw the work that we did, and he recommended us for Trial Lawyer of the Year award, along with Billy Murphy, because Billy worked with us on that particular case. And we won, so we were designated the Trial Lawyers of the Year by the Maryland State Bar Association group. And so that was really phenomenal. And then the only other thing I can say, that I was a part of that small group of African-American attorneys back in the early 80s, along with Gene Hitchcock, Roberta Gill, you may know Roberta, and George Gosley. And we were the original founders of the Alliance of Black Women Attorneys, which is a pretty prominent group right now that handles a lot of issues that are happening, try to look out for employment opportunities for women. But we saw a need back then and formed that organization. So I've had some real highlights. I'm very fortunate to have that, notwithstanding the fact that it was not an easy road, because trying to find the employment, it didn't come my way that way, but it came in a better way. And even in court, I mean, with some of the judges, some of the attorneys, the kind of jeers, the kind of looks, the kind of statements, wasn't always the most professional. But one of the things that Ken taught me that has gone a long ways, and I have since said that to my son, he says, when you open that door and you go in that courtroom, he said, you walk into that courtroom like you own it. It is yours. He said, it's like walking on stage. You're the star, you own it, and you go for it. And I teach my son the same thing. So I've been able to walk in, deal with confidence, and get the job done.
Yes, beautiful. All right, so and we'll begin to wrap up here, but I certainly want just I want you to speak about what's your mission now. I know you want to speak globally. I know you're going to China real soon.
In 5 days.
Yes.
Yeah, let me just say it, because that's how you and I met at one of the speakers conferences. And in 5 days, I'll be in China, and I will be speaking to a group of graduate students and graduates of medical college there. I have a goddaughter who is a Ghanaian, and she's graduating. And she invited me to come over just to her graduation. And then when she started to tell her friends about my background and my experiences, they said, well, we want to hear from her. And so she set it up for me to speak to them. And I'm pretty excited about that. And actually it ties in with my future mission, which is to do international speaking on a cultural basis, and just to talk about my experiences, my life, and my stories, and give people coming out of college into the work world hope that no matter what things may look like, you can overcome it. And I feel like I'm an overcomer and more than a conqueror. So.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right. Well, one final question. If there was one person that you could meet in history, living or dead, who would that person be and why?
Okay, and I took a look on your bookshelf and you have her right there.
Okay.
The person, I've known about her seems like all of my life, so if I could meet her, I would basically feel like I'm in really good company because I know her, but I would ask her a lot of questions. That person is Harriet Tubman.
Oh, wow.
And I gotta tell you, what's so exciting about this is that a year and a half ago when Morgan State University kicked off its sesquicentennial anniversary at Sharp Street, they were giving the true history of the founders of the school. And in the process, they determined it was Samuel Green, and that Samuel Green was first cousin to Harriet Tubman.
Wow.
From Cambridge, Dorchester, Maryland. Well, my grandmother is from
family,
Cambridge. Yeah, and so as it turned out, long and the short of it is my relatives on my grandmother's side who are from Cambridge, Maryland, are related to the Green family and Harriet Tubman. And so I was like beside myself because this woman has always been my hero. And I've always said, oh my God, I admire so much about her. So if I had a chance to talk to her, some of the same questions you asked me about my passion, my purpose and things, I would say that to her. And I think I would say thank you. Thank you. And probably that line in Maya Angelou's poem, I Rise, that says, I, Harriet, am the dream and the hope of the slave, and just thank her for what she did, because that's what I am. And I'd also tell her, and you're that phenomenal woman that Maya Angelou talks about also. Wow. So I'm a phenomenal woman who's soon to be on the $20 bill.
Amen.
So that is
she has a great museum. We went not to the initial opening. Did you? Have you been?
I did.
At the initial opening?
I went.
Oh, well, yeah.
I went to the pre-one.
Okay.
The initial one, as I told you, I was away in Panama at the time.
Okay.
But I've been down on the shore down at Cambridge a number of times. As a matter of fact, a large part of my clientele, before I even knew about my connection to her, came from the Cambridge area. Right. So it had been something there going on that, hey, these people are coming to me, which has always been a great thing for me.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. All right. So if anyone wanted to reach you, how would they do that? And you would like to speak in front of with young people?
Yes. My new company is Olivia Darden, Pearls of Wisdom. So my new email address is Olivia, P-O-W for Pearls of Wisdom, at gmail.com.
Okay.
So contact me or send me a text on my text number, and that's 410-707-9878. I'd be happy to talk to you about an engagement, speaking. And I'm doing it locally in the state, but also internationally, because I'll be in Cancun in July, China next week, and who knows after that. So I'm excited.
All right.
Yes.
Well, it's beautiful. It's a pleasure, and I want to just thank you for your time, and thank you for coming out and sitting down with us. All right.
It's been my pleasure.
Yes,
Thank you
pleasure
so
very
much.
much.
Okay. Thank you.